Imagine you are a sculptor, standing before a magnificent, unformed block of marble. You have been told that within this stone lies a masterpiece, your true potential, your best self. But instead of a fine chisel and a light mallet, you have been handed a heavy sledgehammer. Every time you see a rough edge or a slight imperfection, you swing with all your might. You believe that by striking hard enough, by being relentless and unforgiving, you will eventually shatter away the bad parts to reveal the beauty beneath. But as the dust settles, you realize the truth. You haven't carved a masterpiece. You have only left yourself fractured and bruised. The ground is covered in shards of who you used to be, and the figure that remains is trembling. This is the paradox of self-severity. We treat our souls like stubborn enemies that must be beaten into submission, forgetting that a flower does not grow faster because you yell at it, and a heart does not heal by being broken again. Today we are exploring the hidden, heavy cost of being too hard on yourself and the quiet, transformative power of finally putting the hammer down. You know this feeling well. It starts the moment your eyes open in the morning, that subtle, persistent hum of not enough. It's the mental checklist that begins before your feet even hit the floor, a list not of what you want to achieve, but of where you have already failed. You carry it into the kitchen as you make coffee, replaying a conversation from 3 days ago where you said the wrong thing, or perhaps just said the right thing in a way that you've convinced yourself was awkward. This is the 3 a.m. tribunal, the court of law that meets in the quiet of your own mind, where you are simultaneously the defendant, the prosecutor, and the hanging judge. In your daily life, this shows up as a relentless pressure to perform, to optimize, and to perfect. You might find yourself unable to enjoy a moment of rest because a voice in your head whispers that rest is for the weak, or that you haven't earned it yet. You see others through a lens of compassion, yet you deny that same mercy to yourself. If a friend came to you, exhausted and weeping from the weight of their mistakes, you would offer them a seat and a warm cup of tea. But when it is you who is exhausted, you simply tell yourself to try harder or get over it. This self-imposed hardness creates a constant state of internal friction. It's like driving a car with the emergency brake pulled halfway up. You can still move, but you are burning out the engine, and the smell of smoke is starting to fill the cabin. You are tired not just physically, but deep in your marrow from the sheer effort of being your own harshest critic. To understand why we do this, we can look to the ancient wisdom of the Buddha, who spoke of the 2 arrows. The first arrow is the unavoidable pain of life, the mistakes we make, the losses we endure, the physical pains of existence. This arrow is part of being human. But then, the Buddha said, we often shoot ourselves with a second arrow. This second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the self-judgment, the why am I like this, and the I should have known better. While the first arrow causes a wound, it is the second arrow that causes the suffering. We cannot always stop the first arrow from flying, but we are the ones who pull the bowstring for the second. In Buddhist philosophy, much of this suffering stems from clinging, not just to things or people, but to an idealized, static version of who we think we should be. We cling to the ego, a fixed self that we feel we must defend and polish. But the Dharma teaches us the concept of times anicca, or impermanence. Everything is in flux. The you who made a mistake yesterday is literally not the same you who is reflecting on it today. Your cells have changed, your thoughts have flowed like a river, and your environment has shifted. When we are hard on ourselves, we are trying to punish a ghost, a version of us that no longer exists, while neglecting the living, breathing person who is here right now. We forget that compassion, or times karuna, is not a reward for being perfect. It is the medicine for being imperfect. By recognizing that we are a process rather than a product, we can begin to let go of the rigid expectations that keep us paralyzed in a state of self-loathing. To move forward, we must understand a crucial distinction that often gets blurred in the fog of self-criticism, the difference between guilt and shame. This distinction is the bridge between healthy growth and destructive stagnation. Guilt is a functional, even helpful emotion. It says, I did something bad. It focuses on the action. Guilt is a compass. It tells us when we have strayed from our values and prompts us to make amends, to apologize, or to learn. It is about behavior, and behavior can be changed. Shame, however, is a poison. Shame says, I times am times bad. It shifts the focus from the action to the essence of who you are. When you are too hard on yourself, you are usually operating from a place of shame. You aren't just upset that you missed a deadline or forgot a birthday. You use those events as evidence that you are fundamentally flawed, lazy, or unlovable. Shame doesn't want you to grow. It wants you to hide. It creates a shame spiral, where the more you judge yourself, the more paralyzed you become, which leads to more mistakes, which leads to more judgment. Think about the implications of this. If you believe you did something wrong, you can fix it. But if you believe you are something wrong, there is no solution other than to disappear or to punish yourself indefinitely. This is why self-severity is so ineffective. It's like trying to clean a window by throwing rocks at it. You might get rid of the smudge, but you'll destroy the glass in the process. True change, the kind that lasts, can only happen in an environment of safety. Just as a child learns best when they feel supported and encouraged, your inner self can only evolve when it feels it is safe to make a mistake without the threat of total character assassination. This brings us to the beginning of a process called compassionate reframing. To heal, we must learn to look back at our past selves, even the version of us from 5 minutes ago, not as a criminal to be interrogated, but as a student who was struggling with a difficult lesson. We often judge our past actions using the wisdom we only gain times, because times of those actions, it is a rigged game. You are punishing your younger self for not knowing what your older self knows now. Imagine you are looking at a photo of yourself from 5 or 10 years ago. Look at the eyes of that person. They didn't have the tools you have now. They were dealing with fears you've since conquered, or perhaps they were operating in a survival mode you've forgotten. Compassion is the act of looking at that person and saying, I see why you did what you did. You were trying to protect yourself. You were trying to find happiness, even if you were looking in the wrong places. I forgive you for not being perfect, because perfection was never the requirement for being worthy of love. Compassion is not letting yourself off the hook or making excuses. It is providing the context. It is acknowledging that you are a complex human being influenced by biology, upbringing, and circumstance. When we reframe our struggles with kindness, we create the internal space necessary to actually change. We stop wasting all our energy on self-defense and start using it for self-evolution. We begin to realize that the hidden cost of being hard on ourselves was our own peace, our own creativity, and our own capacity to connect with others. And as we start to pay that cost back to ourselves in the currency of kindness, the world begins to look very different. When we talk about compassion, it is easy to mistake it for a form of weakness. You might worry that if you stop being hard on yourself, you will lose your edge, that you will become lazy, stagnant, or indifferent. But this is the great illusion of the inner critic. Compassion is not letting yourself off the hook. It is not about making excuses for your mistakes or lowering your standards until they no longer exist. Instead, compassion is the act of providing the necessary context. It is acknowledging that you are a complex human being, a living tapestry woven from threads of biology, upbringing, and unforeseen circumstance. Think of a tree that grows crooked because it was planted on a steep, windy hillside. You wouldn't look at that tree and blame it for not being straight. You would look at the soil, the wind, and the lack of light. You would understand the context of its growth. Reframing your life through the lens of compassion means looking at your crooked parts, your anxieties, your failures, your moments of temper, and realizing they were often survival mechanisms developed in response to a storm you didn't choose. When we reframe our struggles with kindness, we create the internal space necessary to actually change. We stop wasting all our energy on self-defense, constantly trying to prove to our inner judge that we aren't bad, and we start using that energy for self-evolution. We begin to realize that the hidden cost of being hard on ourselves was our own peace, our own creativity, and our own capacity to connect with others. As we start to pay that cost back to ourselves in the currency of kindness, the world begins to look very different. Imagine replacing your internal drill sergeant with a wise mentor. When you fail, instead of the usual barrage of insults, you try a different dialogue. You say to yourself, "I see that you are hurting right now. It makes sense that you're frustrated because you care deeply about doing well. This mistake doesn't define your worth. It defines a moment in time. What can we learn here so we can move forward with more wisdom?" This shift in dialogue is revolutionary. It's the difference between trying to grow a garden by beating the soil with a stick and trying to grow it by providing water and sunlight. One creates dust, the other creates life. You are not a project to be solved. You are a soul to be tended. By understanding your past self as someone who was doing their best with the limited tools they had at the time, you finally give yourself permission to put down the heavy stones of regret. So, how do we do this in the heat of the moment? How do we stop the momentum of a lifetime of self-criticism? It begins with the smallest of shifts, the shift from being the judge to being the witness. The next time you feel that familiar tightening in your chest, the signal that you've started to turn against yourself, try the practice of labeling. When the thought arises that says, "You've ruined everything," don't fight the thought. Simply label it. Say to yourself, "I am having the thought that I ruined everything." This tiny linguistic shift creates a gap. It reminds you that you are the one observing the thought, not the thought itself. In Buddhist tradition, this is the beginning of freedom, realizing that thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky of your mind. You are the sky, the clouds are just weather. Next, engage in the softening breath. When we are hard on ourselves, our bodies physically brace for impact. Our shoulders rise, our jaw clenches, and our breathing becomes shallow. In this state, your brain is convinced you are under attack. To break the cycle, consciously soften your belly. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine the tension leaving your muscles like sand slipping through an hourglass. This sends a physical signal to your nervous system that the threat is over. You are safe. You are allowed to relax. Finally, try the touchstone of presence. Place a hand over your heart or on your opposite arm. Feel the warmth of your own skin. This simple physical gesture activates the release of oxytocin, the hormone associated with safety and bonding. In that moment, ask yourself, what is the kindest thing I can do for myself in the next 5 minutes? Maybe it's drinking a glass of water. Maybe it's stepping away from the screen. Maybe it's simply allowing yourself to feel sad without trying to fix it. These are not small acts. They are the building blocks of a new relationship with yourself. As we reach the end of this reflection, take a moment to consider the version of you that exists 10 years from today. That future self is looking back at you right now. They don't remember the minor mistakes you're currently agonizing over. They don't care about the awkward thing you said in that meeting or the project that didn't go perfectly. What they care about is whether or not you were a friend to yourself along the way. The hidden cost of being too hard on yourself is a debt that no one can pay but you. But the good news is that you can choose to stop borrowing from your future peace today. You can choose to believe that your value is inherent, not earned. You can choose to see your growth not as a climb up a jagged mountain, but as the slow, beautiful unfolding of a flower that was always meant to bloom. You have spent so much of your life being your own harshest critic. Just for today, try being your own strongest ally. Forgive the person you were yesterday, so you can fully inhabit the person you are becoming today. The road ahead is long, but it doesn't have to be walked in shame. It can be walked in the light of understanding, with a heart that is finally at rest. Remember, you are the only person you will be with for every single second of your life. Make it a beautiful relationship. You have suffered enough at your own hands. It is time to be held in your own heart.